Weirdos. It's me so uncomfortable. Feral, like fucking feral.
For us and the Allfather! The Bloodmaws. Now, you may have seen this symbol on some Space Wolves before, whether it be models you saw on Instagram or in the official artwork or whatever have you. Also, you could have went and got yourself some new Space Wolf miniatures, seeing that they updated the transfer sheet. Possibly also learning that the Blackmanes aren't the only great company in the chapter. At this time, you may be asking yourself, who the hell are these guys? What's their shtick? Why do they paint their helmets like that? Are they a successor chapter or a great company? That's a badass symbol. Mean anything? Do they actually eat people, or is that just blown out of proportion? Who the hell is this Bran Redmaw guy, and why does he turn into a damn werewolf? Well, that, my Fenrysian, is why I'm here. In this video, I'm going to tell you all about the lore, origins, and general vibe of these unhinged wolf boys.
So have you ever done DMT?
As you could probably tell, I am personally a big fan of these guys. And lately I've been seeing them show up more and more in fan art and models while I'm like doom scrolling Instagram. That and GW finally started to give other great companies some love for once. Like with that new transfer sheet I mentioned earlier and the Space Wolf DLC in Space Marine 2, for instance. That also helped bring a lot of attention to them. Goes without saying, they're my favorite company and my favorite faction in Warhammer 40k. And I personally think they're an underrated aspect of the Space Wolves that deserve love too. For years, the damn Blackmanes have soaking up way too much spotlight for the Vlka Fenryka. Really, it got to the point where people thought the Blackmanes were all there was in the Space Wolves. So I'm even thinking like the Blackmane symbol, this one right here, was the official Space Wolf symbol, which is really GW's fault, but in actuality, the Space Wolves don't have a singular symbol that represents their chapter. They have a different one for each company. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. The point is, because of the recent interest and curiosity for the Bloodmaws, I decided to make this video going over them as a whole. Not only do I hope to give you a general overview of the Bloodmaws, but by the end of the video you might come to love them as much as I do. Or at least see that there's more to the Space Wolf than just Ragnar and his damn Blackmanes. I swear, they're the Ultramarines of the Space Wolves. Well, at least Grimnar appears to be taking center stage recently with Armageddon and all that jazz. Too bad his battle sled got destroyed. Missed that thing. Actually, you know what? Screw it. By the end of the video, the Bloodmaws are going to be the new poster boys for the Space Wolves. Total feral-ass Wulfen takeover. Kick that boy Ragnar and Logan to the curb. Redmaw for Great Wolf, everybody. Let's go. Now with all that out of the way, blessed be the Bloody Hunter, my friends.
Oh God. Oh my God.
To get right into it, the Bloodmaws are one of the 13 great companies of the Space Wolves chapter. Back in the day, before Belisarius Cawl was able to make primary successor chapters for the Space Wolves, like the Wolfspears, the Space Wolves did not have any successors due to the instability of their gene seeds. That will be important for the Bloodmaws later. And the Space Wolves pretty much only use the Codex as tinder for their fires, so they rather base their hierarchy chapter organization on the traditions of their homeworld of Fenris. One of those traditions being splitting their chapter into 13 different great companies. And this was basically the Space Wolves' substitute for successor chapters in the days past of the hobby. Each of the great companies has their own unique combat style, doctrine, and personality that separates them from the rest. And given how the Space Wolves just don't care about what the Codex says about company size, there's no telling how many Marines are in a given great company, all basically being a whole chapter in their own right. And among these, we have our boys, the great company of Bran Redmaw, also known as the Bloodmaws. Now, like I said, each great company basically has their own gimmick. You got the Death Wolves that love using Thunderwolf cavalry and are the most attuned to the wolves of Fenris, the Sons of Mordecai who use Wolf Scouts often and are the most brooding of the Space Wolves, Iron Wolves who utilize armored warfare to the fullest, and Fire Howlers with the most rowdy of blood claws amongst their ranks. So, what about the Bloodmaws?
Run for your life before I kill again! I'm a psycho.
Yeah, it's going, Wulfen. Unfortunately, the Bloodmaws are the black sheep of the family. They're known as the Cursed Ones, or Wulfenkin, by their brothers. And as you can guess from those kind of nicknames, the Bloodmaws are the most afflicted by the Wulfen Curse out of all the Vlka Fenryka. For those who aren't tracking, the Wulfen Curse is a flaw in the Space Wolf's gene seed called the Canis Helix. Whenever a Space Wolf aspirant passes the trials and is seen as worthy to join those of the road, a Wolf Priest will give them the cup of Wulfen that contains the Canis Helix, the genetic makeup of their Primarch and father, Leman Russ. Once an aspirant drinks from this cup, he's thrown butt-ass naked into the frozen wilderness of Fenris and must fight the urge to give into the curse of their gene seed, where he essentially becomes little more than a feral beast. If the aspirant is able to control his primal nature and make it back to the Space Wolves chapter monastery, known as the Fang, then he ascends into the ranks of the Vlka Fenryka as a Bloodclaw. If he fails and gives in to the curse, then he is lost to the wilderness of Fenris, forever damned to be what's essentially a werewolf.
Just shove the Canis Helix into my face and throw me out into the wilderness now, please and thank you.
All Father willing.
However, don't be fooled. Just because the Space Wolf passes this trial and controls the Wulfen Curse this time doesn't mean it won't come knocking again. As this expert from the Space Wolf's 10th edition codex will tell you, even those who have passed the test of Morkai and completed their ascent into the ranks of the Sky Warriors are not immune to the lingering threat posed by the Canis Helix. In moments of raw fury, at the peak of the warrior's battle frenzy, the curse of the Wulfen may rear its head. It is an ever-present threat that haunts the soul of every son of Russ. Most of those who allow their inner beast to take over in the heat of battle can reassert control once their foes lie dead and the stench of their victims' blood has faded away. Others are less fortunate. These wretched beings become locked in a never-ending cycle of savage brutality, becoming cursed reminders of the fate that may await any son of Russ. So yeah, in layman's terms, the Bloodmaws are basically space werewolves. Now you can imagine this doesn't necessarily put them in good standing amongst their brothers. And you are 100% correct. The Space Wolves are anything if not superstitious and hold the Bloodmaws in high suspicion. Seeing them as rabid dogs at the best and ticking time bombs at worst. Not to mention, they see the Bloodmaws as liabilities on keeping their gene flaw a secret from the rest of the Imperium, including the Inquisition and Ecclesiarchy. Speaking of which, the Bloodmaws absolutely hate the Inquisition and also the Ecclesiarchy. Not only because the Space Wolves see them as power-hungry, corrupt bureaucrats, but also because they tend to follow the Bloodmaws around the most out of all the other great companies. See, the Ecclesiarchy sees them as savage, unholy mutants, and the Inquisition already have a hunch that there's something up with the Space Wolves' gene seed, and know damn well if they want to get dirt on the Space Wolves, the Bloodmaws are going to be the ones to unintentionally give it to them, being that they can barely control themselves to begin with. But the Bloodmaws are not idiots. They know the Inquisition and the Ecclesiarchy are constantly spying on them, and have gone through great efforts to cover their tracks and throw them off their trail. Take this report from Imperial Armor Volume 11, where it seems the Bloodmaws somehow removed their company sigil from the Inquisitorial records of the massacre of Kurazindar, or however you're supposed to say that. As we read, between its deployment at the Mantis and the Batalis III incursions, there is little mention of Bran Redmaw's great company and Imperial records. Buried deep within the Inquisition's archives for the Western Segmentum Pacificus sector, there is a file which has been classified as accessible only by the highest echelons of that order. It has only ever been accessed by one person, and his location is currently listed as missing, The file is heavily restricted because it is a full account of the 50-year war fought against the Khornate Chaos Demon Karazendar, which manifested within one of the few heavily populated Imperial systems on the border between the Halo Stars and the west of the Segmentum Pacificus. As it emerged into real space on the fourth planet, the demon's thunderous war cry was heard by all in the world. Driven beyond sense by its insidious war chant, the entire population rose up and began to wage war on neighboring populated planets. In response, a massive Imperial Guard army was raised to defeat the demon and its followers. No record exists of any of the billions of guardsmen who were raised returning from the region during or after the war, and all files pertaining to the system has since been expunged from Departamento Munitorum facilities. The demon was cast successfully back into the warp by the combined forces of the Inquisition and the Grey Knights chapter. It is at this point that Bran Redmaw's Great Company is believed to have played its part in this war. Although it is not mentioned by name, the account of the battle against the Chaos-turned-human hordes whilst the Grey Knights fought the demons bears what appears to be the mark of the Wolf Lord. An attempt to forcibly remove this mark has clearly been made at some point, as it is now barely recognizable. Awfully convenient how the only Inquisitor to ever see this record is now missing. I'm sure the Bloodmaws had no part in that whatsoever. Speaking of their company sigil, the Bloodmaws bear the mark of the Bloodied Hunter. This is an ancient Fenrysian symbol that is meant to show whoever wears this mark upon them is tainted by the curse of the Wulfen. Its bloody maw representing the most savage aspect of the wolf, that of a feral hunter. The first appearance we see of the sigil is in the 2nd edition Space Wolves Codex, where it's known as the Blooded Hunter, and is one of the badges you can choose when making your own Great Company. Given that back in those days, GW highly encouraged you using your own creativity, and it wasn't even the Bloodmaws sigil at the time. Bran Redmaw's first appearance wasn't even until the 3rd edition Codex, where the Bloodied Hunter wasn't his company's sigil. Hell, the badge wasn't even in this codex. If you take a close look at Bran, his sigil at the time was the Spirit Wolf, which in current lore is the company badge of the Dusk Wolves, led by Torvald Weirdbane, who succeeded Vorik Njarfist of the Iron Wolves. R.I.P. Iron Wolves. Anyways, back on topic, the Bloodmaws wouldn't be fully realized until the 5th edition codex here. Bran Redmaw, whose personal icon is the Bloodied Hunter, likes nothing more than to hunt under the full moon. Bran is instinctively cunning, able to second-guess his enemies and ensure that his Grey Hunters lie in wait for the enemy after the fury of his front line forces them to retreat. The savagery of his company is legend. An enemy force trapped by Bran's Great Company will quite literally be torn to pieces. The sign of the Bloody Hunter is associated with those with the mark of the Wulfen, and indeed, there are many in Bran's Great Company who bear that peculiar curse. Some even whisper that Bran has been seen to take on a different form when caught up in the hunt. Also, fun fact, in honor to the Bloody Hunter, before battle, a rune priest of the Bloodmaws will sacrifice a Fenrysian wolf and smear its blood on the balls of the Space Marines' helmets. This is where you see the iconic color scheme on their helmets come from, the red maw over a black or blue helmet. And the black and blue doesn't seem to really mean anything. That seems to be more of a stylistic choice. What's really important and ritualistic is the red maw on them. That is not paint. That is Fenrysian wolf blood. Stylistically, it's just to make their helmets look more like the Bloodied Hunter. This ritual is meant to help the Bloodmaws control their kill urge and keep the curse at bay in the heat of battle, and to impart the wolf's strength and cunning upon the Marine, swearing that they would rather die in battle than to be defeated. None embody that aspect of the Bloodied Hunter more than the one who chose it, Bran Redmaw, Wolf Lord of the Bloodmaws. And as you can see from the last passage of lore, Bran is both a savage and cunning hunter. And yes, he himself is under the Wulfen curse. Now you may be asking why, or even how, would a space wolf afflicted by the Wulfen curse be promoted to Wolf Lord of an entire company? You, my Fenrysian, are voicing the exact concerns that the other Wolf Lords had when they heard that Redmaw was chosen. As this passage from Imperial Armor Volume 11, Doom of Mimera reads, "The character of each great company's commander, to a greater or lesser extent, influences its warriors. And Bran Redmaw's company is renowned for being a savage pack of cunning and ruthless killers. This is because, more than any of the other great companies, the stain of the Space Wolves' greatest secret lies heavily upon them, that of the curse of the Wulfen. For this reason, Bran's great company is looked upon with some suspicion by the other 11 Wolf Lords. They all respect the company's fighting prowess, but those that serve under the banner of the Bloodied Hunter are regarded as tainted and draw the eyes of those of the Imperium outside the Space Wolves chapter more than they wish. More Space Wolves bearing the curse of the Wulfen serve alongside Bran Redmaw than any other Wolf Lord. Amongst the upper echelons of the Space Wolves, there's an unspoken truth as to the reason why. For Bran has risen to become a lord, despite being afflicted himself. After the death of Lord Andhrimnir during the Mordrak campaign, Bran Redmaw was promoted by Lord Andhrimnir's retinue to replace him as leader of his great company, as is the Space Wolves chapter's traditions regarding rights of succession. It was not a popular decision. In private, other Space Wolves commanders stepped forth to voice their concerns, especially the venerable wolf priest Ulrich the Slayer. Was Bran to be trusted in such a position of power? Would he allow his darker, feral nature to take control of his mind and soul? The great wolf, Logan Grimnar, quashed all complaints, for he could see that Bran was an extraordinary warrior, and, through sheer force of will, had subdued the beast within. In this manner, Logan Grimnar had looked to the advice of his eldest counselor, Bjorn, the Fell-Handed. Only the ancient Dreadnought was old enough to recall that Bran would not be the first to reach such high office with the curse upon him. Although he fully supports Bran's promotion to Wolf Lord, Logan Grimnar is not without caution and has ordered Ulrich the Slayer and his wolf priest to keep a close watch over Bran and his company, so that they do not stray too far and risk becoming another lost great company. The current Great Wolf will not risk repeating the mistakes of the past. It is in this lore that we also learn that Redmaw has a very unique way of going Wulfen. As it continues, Bran, knowing the beast that lurks within him, avoids the close company of his warriors. Having issued his orders before deployment, he now prefers to hunt alone, or in the company of a pack of Fenrysian wolves. He leaves his trusted Wolfguard battle leaders in direct tactical control. Should the curse of the Wulfen take him, then Bran is transformed into a huge, ravenous wolf beast, fully 12 feet tall, powerful, fast, and with claws that can rend plasteel and fangs like adamantive daggers. Consumed by a frenzied bloodlust, the Redmaw tears its foes apart in an orgy of blood. But despite its bestial appearance, the Redmaw is no mindless killer. The beast still retains a hunter's cunning, using stealth and patience to get close to the prey before pouncing upon them in a sudden explosion of gory violence. So yeah, he's pretty damn metal. Hell, in this Imperial armor, he's even got rules for both his regular and Wulfen form, the Redmaw. Which reminds me that I really need to convert my own Redmaw model soon. That way, I can bring a giant-ass space werewolf to lead my Bloodmaws army, and blow my game store friends' minds with my space wolf shenanigans.
You're going to get so many diseases from eating a person. The human body is hardwired against eating other humans. Doing so even consensually will cause a severe amount of psychological stress. Quit having fun!
Well, these guys just sound like flesh terrors, but space wolves. And...
well, yeah.
Even though you are pretty much correct, just shut up, man. Look, granted GW tends to rinse and repeat lore with a slightly different filter and are anything but original, but I'll tell you what does separate the Bloodmaws from the Flesh Terrors, other than just werewolves instead of vampires. It's a moral compass. You see, the Bloodmaws are feral, bloodthirsty, savage monsters, but more in the sense on how, like, Hulk, Frankenstein, or Wolverine is a monster. Actually, the Bloodmaws are heavily Wolverine-coded if you think about it. But what I'm saying is, they actually care about innocents and go out of their way to not hurt them. They know that they have a tendency to lose control in the heat of battle, so they intentionally will deploy their forces away from Imperial Guard and civilian forces, not only to avoid suspicion from the wider Imperium, but also because they genuinely care about regular people.
Lucky shot.
If you say so, big guy. Now remember, watch out for civilians.
Is that why you teamed up with me? To protect people from the monster?
Stow that talk. I want you to protect civilians from Hydra. They're the monsters here, not you. In my day, we had a name for someone like you.
Yeah? What's that?
Hero. I've been watching you, Hulk. No matter how scared people are of you, no matter how much you're hounded, you always do the right thing. And that makes you a hero in my book. Now, how about we smash some more Hydra goons?
For example, in Psychic Awakening, Saga of the Beast, the Bloodmaws, and the Red Moon's Great Company were supposed to join the champions of Fenris on a campaign at Gotgard when they stopped to resupply at Brakatos in the Gloomtide cluster. When they realized that the planet was overrun by snakebite hordes, they flat out refused to leave the planet to its fate, and would only leave once the planet was freed from the Greenskins. And if that ain't enough, just look at this excerpt from the Battle of Montberg Spaceport in the Space Wolves 7th Edition Codex. Hive Fleet Colossus descends in force upon the civilized world of Thresiax, and the forces garrisoned there proved unable to stop the Tyranid invaders. Imperial High Command calls for all remaining forces to withdraw and leave the settlers of Thresiax to their fate, so that the Tyranids can be exterminated from space. Bran Redmaw, resupplying upon Thresiax at the time, objects fiercely to this dictate. He sends 2 full squads of Grey Hunters to reinforce the vital spaceport of Montberg, so that the people of Thresiax can evacuate. The Grey Hunters intensively train the menfolk of Montberg, putting the fear of Fenris into any considering desertion. Against all the odds, the Grey Hunters and their new recruits hold the walls of the spaceport against the Tyranid swarms, buying the civilians enough time to escape. When the 6 surviving Grey Hunters finally withdraw from the spaceport, Imperial High Command demands that they be stripped of all honors for disobeying a direct command. Instead, Bran Redmaw promotes all 6 into his personal wolf guard in recognition of their valorous deeds. So just mix in a little bit of salamander with your fleshed hair, and you got yourself a Bloodmaw. However, war is war, and just like the Battle of Montberg shows, the Bloodmaws will have to deploy with guard or near civilians when the situation demands it. This is where problems arise and accidents tend to happen. Because when your whole thing is losing control and going apeshit, collateral damage tends to follow. So here's how things usually tend to go wrong. For starters, you know how some Space Marines tend to give off an aura that affects those around them depending on their gene lineage? Well, the Space Wolves already give off an aura of wild, dangerous animals, and with the Bloodmaws, these bad vibes turn into straight up panic. Look at this report from the, again, Imperial Armor Volume 11. As per your instructions, my lord, I can now provide you with details of the heretical accusations placed upon the Adeptus Astartes during the defense of Vitalis III. Be mindful, your reverence, that these accusations, as I am sure one with your wisdom will already have surmised, have come from the lips of the lowest of the Emperor's citizens, prone to such superstitions and feverish ramblings. The worst offenders have already been dispatched upon my orders to the execution cells upon my vessel. Should you not wish to interrogate them further, I will proceed to dispense his justice upon them. What I have learned from my interrogations is that upon seeing the Holy Ones descend from the heavens, the guardsmen took to using Company Retribution's Vox network to make all aware of their arrival. Their praise and adulations for the Adeptus Astartes of the Space Wolves chapter, although a worthy blandishment for his warriors, undoubtedly prevented important orders being received and may also have allowed the enemies to track their progress into the Tormus Delta. That their accusations upon finally seeing the Adeptus Astartes severely affected morale within the company and caused panic in their vicinity that cannot be ignored. Heretical reports of his warriors bearing the countenance of beast and eschewing their holy bolters in favor of tearing the enemies apart with their bare hands were not the worst of their broadcasts, and I am currently reviewing each transcript. One impious guardsman, who I executed on the spot upon hearing his account, claimed to have disturbed a monstrous wolf-like creature bearing the panoply of the chapter whilst it was feasting upon a Xenos corpse. I believe this to actually have been a creature native to this Emperor-forsaken world, and have instructed local forces to see to its destruction before its appetite takes on a human preference. Hint, hint. I, as always, await your instructions. Commissar Malice. And of course, you got the whole "our company is cursed" thing. One thing you gotta understand about the Wulfen curse is that just because you are afflicted by it doesn't mean you are turned immediately into a space werewolf like you see in the models. These models are more representative of the now returned lost 13th Great Company, rather than the Wulfen curse as a whole. These kind of Wulfen are a fairly new phenomenon in the lore, and while yes, the lore in and of itself is kind of contradictory on what exactly the Wulfen curse is, from what we can see in the sources, it wasn't until the novel Curse of the Wulfen where we get the Wulfen you see in the artwork and models now. In the novel, Harold Deathwolf and his great company of the Deathwolves discover these guys while fighting a demon incursion on the planet of Euryades. He first notices the severe mutations like hair all over their bodies, disfigured wolf-like face, lupine legs, and giant muscle-bound stature, and is taken aback by this until he sees ancient Eurasian markings on their outgrown armor, and figures this must be the lost 13th Great Company. He takes them back to Fenris, where the Great Wolf Logan Grimnar and the Council of Wolf Lords are just as shocked as Harold is. I mean, just listen to this. The Hall of the Great Wolf erupted. "How can we be sure?" Gunnar Redmoon demanded. "Where's the proof? How do we even know the Wulfen are what they claim to be?" "Their existence speaks for them," Sven Bloodhound answered, "as do their deeds. They saved Lord Deathwolf." He looked at Harold. "You, who are brother to more wolves in your company than any of us, must feel the truth of our kinship with the 13th. Harold gave Bloodhound a long look. The other Wolf Lord was much younger than he was. His hair and his beard were a rich brown, cut short. His symmetrical, rock-jawed features were indeed much further from the lupine than Harold's. He would feel the complexities and risk of the warrior's relationship with the beast less acutely. "We are kin to wolves," Harold said. "We are as wolves. We are not wolves. You can see what they have become." He kept his tone moderate, but his words inflamed tempers even more. The Wolf Lords moved towards the center of the annulus as they shouted at each other. Harold held back. He had expressed his doubts, said what he had to say. The monstrosities of the Wulfen gave him pause, and there were too many unanswered questions about what had happened on Euryades. He could not easily accept the Slayer's pronouncement, though he could not dismiss it either. The other Wolf Lords were far more vehement. "Lord Deathwolf is right," Jarl Grimblood said. "Look what they have become. An omen indeed. A dark one." "How do we know they are really Wolfenkind?" said Eagle Ironwolf. "Why not mutations? After so long in the warp, their Canis Helix could have suffered terrible damage." Eric Morkide snorted. "Monsters or not, what does it matter? They fight well. They're good weapons." "Nothing more?" Bran Redmaw rounded on Morkide. "Is that the depths of your thought and honor? And my war packs? Are we the same to you? Savages to be used up as needed? You hot-blooded fool, did I say that? You as good as dead," Redmaw told Morkai. "If that is all you can see in the Wulfen, you are more blind than I ever imagined." The voices rose up in anger. Side note, I really like how this interaction between Redmaw and Eric Morkai show how the rest of the Space Wolves tend to view the Bloodmaws. But mainly this indicates to us that these guys are not standard Wulfen that the Space Wolves are used to. My best speculation is that the Wulfen curse is mainly like the Deathsworn from the Heresy era Space Wolves. And if we take a look at the description on the Warhammer website, it says, "The Deathsworn are the dark heart of the Sixth Legion, the embodiment of its insatiable hunger for death, consumed by the bloody deeds of the Great Crusade and the predatory taint of their own gene seed. These hollow and murderous warriors embrace the Fenrisian cult of Morkai, guided by the Deathwolf's grim ministries to feast only upon the enemies of humanity." You see, the Space Wolves in novels are often described with having what is called a kill urge, which is their bestial nature filling them with a feral sense of bloodlust that they constantly have to keep in check. And some, like the Bloodmaws, have a much harder time controlling this kill urge more than any others, which is the Wulfen curse that Space Wolves are most familiar with. As for turning into a werewolf, we do have some examples of Space Wolves mutating a little bit when under the Wulfen curse, but we're talking like fangs get bigger, claws get a little bigger, eyes are a bit more wolf-like, they beef up a bit, and maybe like a little bit of a muzzle, but not to the same extent as we see the 13th armor. Hell, we even see in that passage that the Council of Wolf Lords think it's just straight up because of their time in the war. I guess to put it simply, the Wulfen curse is at best the inability to keep your kill urge under control, and at worst losing yourself completely to your feral nature with possible mutations. The Wulfen we see in the models are remnants of the lost 13th Great Company. Okay, so what about the cannibalism? Well, from what I can find, it's mainly hinted at that the Bloodmaws eat their enemies. We do know that the Wulfen definitely eat people, and as we saw in the description of the Deathsworn, those under the influence of curse are guided by Death Wolf's grim ministries to feast upon the enemies of man. Or as we saw in that Commissar's report earlier, where the guardsman just straight up said that he saw one eating the corpse of a Xenos. And with a company known as the Cursed Ones, you can put two and two together and see that it's got to have happened on more than one occasion. But also, we already know that the Space Wolves as a whole will sometimes eat Xenos. In Lucas the Trickster's novels, there's a scene where a Bloodclaw is tempted to eat some Dark Elf bodies that they have, but is hesitant and tells Lucas, "I kill Xenos, I don't eat them." Then Lucas picks at him by mentioning, "We all eaten an orc at one time or another. They cook up nicely."
At least we're not eating them afterwards. Lucas's expression became speculative. Though we could, I suppose. No. Seems a waste to burn them is all. No. Where is your sense of adventure, Halvar? Lucas asked. New experiences are what life is all about. Not our lives. I just kill Xenos. I don't eat them. Halvar hesitated. Except orc, on occasion. Very rare occasions, he added hastily. No need to be ashamed, pup. We've all eaten an orc at one time or another. They cook up nicely.
It's actually in this same novel where we get a big hint that the Bloodmaws are rumored to be cannibals. At the beginning of the novel, Bran Redmaw and Kjall Grimblood are dueling to see who gets to take Lucas into their great company this year, where Bran Redmaw proceeds to beat the ever-living crap out of Grimblood with a bench until he gives up like a little girl.
Redmaw snatched up a bench, scattering those members of the Wolf Guard who had been sitting on it. He struck Grimblood with it, hurling him to the floor in a cloud of splinters. Grimblood groaned and rolled over, spitting blood. He sat up and waved Redmaw away as the other Jarl stalked towards him.
Enough, brother, enough. I can feel my brain sloshing in my skull from that last hit. Do you yield, then?
Redmaw demanded.
I do. Give me a moment. The world is spinning.
While the Wolf Lords present are going over Lucas's long list of pranks he did to his last great company, Redmaw suggests that they just straight up kill Lucas. And of course, Lucas being Lucas, claps back with this.
Like Fenris itself, my orbit is set and endless. Keep laughing and it won't be, Redmaw growled. Perhaps we should end this useless farce once and for all, and you with it.
He looked around, seeking support from the others.
I cannot be the only one wondering why we must endure this madness. He should have been dealt with long ago, and we all know it.
Lucas laughed harder.
And what will you do, Redmaw? Gobble me up?
He clapped his hands and whistled.
I'd like to see you try, cursed one. I'd cut my way out of your overstretched gullet before the next cycle.
Redmaw started to reach for Lucas, but the sharp sound of an iron ferrule striking stone stopped him.
As you can see, Redmaw really hates Lucas. But in summary, while not explicitly stated, it's at least heavily rumored that the Bloodmaws eat people, And if anything, it's at least a funny meme amongst the Warhammer community. Well, there you have it. The Bloodmaws. A company of crazed, feral, cannibalistic softies that I've come to know and love over the years. A niche faction of space wolves that I'm glad has been getting more love from Warhammer fans recently. Hopefully I've done my boys enough justice that you guys have come to appreciate these bloody Wolverine cosplayers as much as my dumbass does. Or at least see that there's more to the space wolves than just Ragnar and his Vikings in space. While not the most civilized of the bunch, the Bloodmaws give a little extra flair to a faction that can be stigmatized as one-dimensional. And not just them. Each great company has its own stories and traits that deserve some time in the spotlight, and it is a damn crime by GW that they haven't branched them out like they deserve. Who knows, I may do more videos like this for the other great companies, but for now I had fun putting something out there about my feral-ass white boys with a hint of swag. For me personally, the Bloodmaws are the thankless heroes. Despite the Imperium and even the Space Wolves themselves only seeing them as feral monsters that are always on the verge of losing control, they always do the right thing. Out of all the great companies, they are the ones most afflicted by the Wulfen curse, but that still doesn't stop them from doing their duty. They are damned. But from that damnation, they still fight, howling in Russ's name. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you made it to the end of the video, I greatly appreciate your time and that you chose to spend it listening to me ramble on about a niche sub-faction that most people don't even know exists. If you want to see more Bloodmaws or Space Wolf related content, not only do I have this YouTube channel, but I am also active on Instagram at the bloodmawtermy. I even stream video games on Twitch under the name bloodmawtermy right here. Thank you again, friends, for watching my videos. Fenryka really does appreciate it. And of course, blessed be the Bloodied Hunter.